From the stories of Noah's Ark and Anna on the lawn, through the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and John. Whether you're new to this or an avid Sunday schooler, we'll learn about the Bible just like church,
but even cooler.
And we take what we learn and we use what we find to go into the world and let the light of God shine.
Buckle up, kids.
Minivangelism. It's time to go Minivangelism. In faith we grow Minivangelism. Let's start the show.
Welcome back.
Hi.
Hi. Are you ready for our week 3 of our Advent adventure?
So ready.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so today we are talking about somebody super important to the Christmas story.
Yes, we are.
Her name is
Mary.
Mary. And what is Mary known for?
She's known for being the mother of Jesus.
Yeah, we're talking about Jesus' mom today.
Yay.
I am so excited because Mary's just a really cool lady.
She is.
So the last 2 weeks, we have had a song, and it was the same song. You shocked me. It was the same song on the second week. Is it the same song again?
It is.
But a little different?
You get part 3 today.
About Mary?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness gracious. I'm so excited. So let's go ahead and put it on.
All right, let's light another candle and listen to week 3. We're going on an Advent adventure. Come along with me. 4 weeks till Christmas. Just enough time to wait and see. Light another candle and gather around the tree. We're going on an Advent adventure. Yippee! Who's that I hear singing glory in excelsis? Angels appear, OMG, let's take a selfie. I hear them singing tidings of great joy. Unto us is born a newborn baby boy. We're going on an Advent adventure. Come along with me. 4 weeks till Christmas. Just enough time to wait and see. Light another candle and gather around the tree. We're going on an Advent adventure. Yippee! Who's that I see running from their flocks by night? A shepherd spree. I guess something gave them quite a fright. No wait, they're happy and bringing us good news. Christ is coming, let's go run and get our shoes. We're going on an Advent adventure. Come along with me. 4 weeks till Christmas. Just enough time to wait and see. Light another candle and gather around the tree. We're going on an Advent adventure. Yippee! Who's that lady sitting all alone? She's having a baby, you can tell by how her belly's grown. His name is Jesus, by earth and heaven adored. Her name is Mary, hail the mother of the Lord. We're going on an Advent adventure. Come along with me. 4 weeks till Christmas. Just enough time to wait and see. Light another candle and gather around the tree. We're going on an Advent adventure. Yippee!
Oh man, I like that one.
Me too. I like it because it has the word hail in it. Hail Mary.
Hail Mary, which you're a Commanders fan.
I am.
That was a huge thing
Yeah,
recently.
hail is our word. But it originates in the Bible when the angel says greetings or hail Mary. Like hello.
So let's talk a little bit about Mary, because Mary, she just got this really cool journey that she goes on in Luke's gospel.
Yeah.
So one day, Mary is just hanging out at her house. We don't really know what she was doing at the time, but she is there, and all of a sudden, an angel, like we talked about in our first Advent Adventure week, an angel shows up to her and starts the conversation the way all angels start their conversations. Don't be scared.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a moment when Mary says, when the scripture says, Mary wasn't sure what kind of greeting this was. Yeah. It's kind of like, are you a good angel or bad angel? What are you about to tell me? And the angel says, do not be afraid.
Yeah, I've got some good news.
Yes.
God is about to send his son.
Yes, and you are going to give birth to God's son.
That's right.
Amazing.
I mean, I think that's just some big news.
It is.
And Mary, she at first is like, how?
Yeah.
Like,
how can this be? I'm not even married.
Yeah, she wasn't. She was engaged at the time to a man named Joseph, and we'll talk about him next week. Spoiler alert. But she is confused, and she asks God, like, how can this be? How can this happen? And God is like, well, the angel says, nothing's impossible. Yes. And this baby is going to just appear in your belly, and you're going to carry this baby, and then you're going to have the baby, and you're going to name the baby Jesus. That's right.
Yeah.
And Mary just responds with,
let it be.
Let it be. That's right.
Yeah. So the angel says the Holy Spirit will give you this child. And Mary hears this good news. And because Mary is faithful, she says, okay, let it be with me according to your will.
That's right. That's right. And so this at the time was kind of scary.
Yeah, it was a huge deal.
Yeah.
Huge deal.
And so Mary then leaves for 3 months, and she goes to visit her cousin Elizabeth. And we talked about Elizabeth in our first Advent Adventure. Elizabeth was the mother of John the Baptist.
Yes.
And so Elizabeth at the time, John the Baptist was in her belly, and Mary shows up to Elizabeth's house, and John the Baptist, who is a baby in his mommy's tummy, starts leaping in the tummy.
Jumping for joy. And Elizabeth says, how honored am I? And says, blessed are you, Mary, among women. Elizabeth feels so fortunate because Elizabeth knows what's going on. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like Mary and Elizabeth are the only ones who really know what's going on.
That's right.
And John the Baptist leaps in Elizabeth's belly, and Mary hears Elizabeth say these nice things about her, and Mary knows, okay, this is for real. Mm-hmm. And she starts singing a song.
Yeah.
And she sings a song about all the things that God can do. And that because of this baby who will be named Jesus, the rich and mighty people are going to come down from their thrones, and the lowly and poor people are going to be lifted up in joy and hope for their future because of what God is doing with her and through Jesus.
Yeah. So Mary did know. And then after she stays with Elizabeth for 3 months, she goes back home to Nazareth and talks to Joseph, her betrothed, and kind of gives him a heads up on what's going on. And like I said, we'll talk more about Joseph next week. But then when it's getting close for her to have the baby, her and Joseph have to go to Bethlehem.
Right.
So they travel to Bethlehem because the government has decreed that they need to go and be counted. And so they go to Bethlehem, and while they're there, it's time for her to have the baby. And Joseph tries to find a place for them to stay in an inn, but there's no rooms. And so Mary has to go and have this baby in a barn.
Yeah, in a stable. Yeah, and she gives birth and wraps the baby in swaddling cloth and lays him in a manger.
Yeah, and a manger, for those of you that don't know, is like a trough. It's the thing that the animals eat out of. And it kind of looks like a crib. A little bit, a bassinet.
It'll work in a pinch.
Yeah. And so she puts the baby in this manger. And then we talked about this last week. All of a sudden, a bunch of shepherds just show up and say, hey, we were sent here by the angels. And the shepherds, they come and they're so amazed to see the baby. And Mary ponders these things in her heart. Mary doesn't really say much after the fact. She just kind of sits with it. And it's like a confirmation of everything that she already knew.
Yeah. Part of the interpretation is that she's just so amazed at what God has done that she just ponders and prays on these things.
Mm-hmm.
It's really beautiful to me.
It is. It is. So, do you have any I wonders about Mary?
I do. I wonder how old she is.
Yeah.
Because there's a few different ideas about that. What do you think?
So if you just look at the age with which women got married at the time, so a long time ago, about 2,000 years ago, people didn't live very long. And so they lived their lives a little bit more speedily,
Yeah.
I guess you could say. And so at the time, girls got married about 16-ish. And so that's what I think. I think she was like in her mid-teens.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, that's about right. I've heard people say like as young as 13, which is super young these days. But back then, like you said, it was about the time when women were ready to get married and have kids. But I just imagine a teenager having all of this happen to them and think that had to be overwhelming.
Yeah. Especially when, she's getting ready to get married. She's still living with her mom and dad. She's getting ready to become a wife. She's getting ready to grow up. She's getting ready to fly the nest. And then all of a sudden, you're having a baby.
Yeah.
And not just any baby. You're having the baby.
That's right. That's right. What do you wonder about it?
I wonder how she told people about the news. Like, did she lead with, you guys aren't going to believe this. Did she keep it a secret? And did people believe her? That's kind of what I wonder about Mary. I
wonder if, it makes me wonder, what are things that I can't wait to tell people and what are things that I only tell a few people? I think like if it's sometimes like feelings that I'm having or thoughts I have about myself or about my life, I only talk to a few people about that. And so I imagine it's the kind of thing that it's a big enough deal that she might not have told many people. In the story, she doesn't really talk to anybody about it until she talks to Elizabeth. And that makes me feel really good things about Elizabeth, because Elizabeth was the kind of person that would listen to her little cousin who had all of these things going on in her life. And it makes me want everybody, including my own children, to have somebody like Elizabeth in their life that they can come to with the big things that are going on.
Yeah. Something that's really interesting is that Mary, she wanted to know kind of the plan. When this angel showed up, she wasn't immediately like, yes or no. She was like, I need more information.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
Yeah. But then after she got the information, she was like, okay, let's do this. Let's roll. Another I wonder I have, and this is more of a question for you. Would you be so quick to say, yeah, sure, if God asked you to do something huge like this?
The short answer is no. So in the Bible, there's all kinds of stories about when God either sends an angel or talks to somebody and says, this is what you're going to do for me, or this is what we're going to do together. And in almost all of the stories like that, when God is calling somebody, the person that God is calling says, there's no way that's going to happen. Moses says, I can't do that. I'm terrible at public speaking. Jonah runs away and ends up in the sea, in the belly of a fish, trying to get away from what God is calling him to do. But Mary is different. Somehow, Mary asks one clarifying question, and then she's good to go. In my own life, like I feel like God called me to work for the church, to be a pastor, and that's something that I didn't want to do for a long time, and for lots of different reasons. One of them was I didn't feel like I was a good enough person to kind of be in charge of a church. And eventually God made it clear, no, you're not a good enough person to be in charge of a church, but I'm going to do this anyway. It was kind of my own experience of nothing will be impossible for God. Yeah. And so that's what the angel says to Mary, and it's all she needs to hear. I kind of wonder if it's because she's young that she has fewer doubts. Like she's ready to go,
right?
And ready to say yes. But I'm certainly glad that she did say yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wondered why Mary?
So that's a great question. Do you have any particular ideas?
I think, like you said, just kind of her willingness to say yes after just asking one clarifying question. Because the book starts with a priest being told something big from God, and then he says, "You're crazy," and then he gets silenced for for 9 months.
Yeah.
But Mary is different, and I just think that kind of reflects the person that she was. And I think that's why she was chosen, is because God knew her heart and knew that she was just a righteous woman.
Yeah, I think part of what the church has said about Mary is you can tell it by the song that she sings after she meets with Elizabeth, when she says, "This is what God is doing, bringing down the mighty and lifting up the lowly." You can tell that she knows what God is like. And there's a lot in her song that she sings that's similar to the song that another woman sings named Miriam, who's the sister of Moses. And after they get through the sea and in Exodus, and they're walking into freedom, Miriam sings a song. And in fact, that's probably why their names are so close, Miriam and Mary. Depending on the language, they might be the same name. And so Mary sings this song. And you can tell that she knows the God that freed people from slavery in Egypt. And she sees this God doing something similar here, about bringing somebody to come and save them. And perhaps it's because she knows who God is. She knows what God is like, that God said, Mary's the right person for this because Mary will get it.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of what the church loves about Mary, is that she's somebody who gets it. In fact, the church sometimes calls her the first disciple, like the first one to follow Jesus, the first one to go where Jesus is going, even though where Jesus is going is like in her body.
Yeah.
And so we remember Mary as somebody who really knows God and really trusts God. And we tell her story a lot so that we can see that you can trust God, and that God is trustworthy, even for Mary and also for us.
And later in the story, when Jesus performs what's considered his first miracle, it's Mary that's the one that's like, "Hey, I know what you're capable of. Let's go ahead and get this going."
That's right. That's right. When Jesus is grown, Mary is in some ways like his biggest cheerleader.
Yeah.
Or the one who is encouraging him to keep going. Now, there's a couple other stories too where she's like, "Are you sure about this?" And Jesus is like, "Yes." But in general, we see Mary as somebody who gets it. And I love that there's this story in the Bible where it's a young woman who gets it better than anybody else in the story. That's the kind of story that would have been rare in the ancient world, and is probably still rare today, where we listen to young women and we believe that they can be faithful and make good decisions and be leaders in the way that Mary is.
Yeah. And Mary was given a choice.
Right.
And I think that's also very important.
Yeah.
Is that God kind of asked her permission a little bit, you know?
Right.
It's just like, "Hey, this is what's happening."
Right.
And she still gave, she still agreed to do it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. So what do you think we learn about God, or where do we see God in the story?
I think we see God in the story just in the person of Mary. And it's like you said, it's an example of how God can use anybody to do really big things.
Yeah.
Because not a lot is known about Mary as far as her station in life, as far as, who her parents were or anything like that. I mean, the fact that she was betrothed to Joseph, who was just a carpenter, she wasn't a princess.
Right.
Or a queen. It doesn't say anything about her being like super important or anything. She was just a teenage girl, and a teenage girl with a good heart. And, she brought about the change, a world changing thing. And so I don't know. And they traveled to Bethlehem, and they weren't important enough to get a room at the inn. They had to stay in the stable. I don't know. I think that's what it tells us about God, is that God can use anyone.
Yeah. In fact, God likes to use the least likely person we would expect. Like God uses a young woman without a husband to have to be born. And we actually do know that they're poor because later when Jesus is born, when they bring him to the temple to have him named, when they're there, they make a sacrifice of 2 turtle doves. And we know from other parts of the Bible that if you don't have enough money to buy a lamb or a ram, you can get away with 2 turtle doves. And so that's part of how we know that they were just a poor family, kind of living on the edge. And that is who God decided to use to bring Jesus into the world. And that we see different versions of that story all throughout the Bible, that God shows up among the poor and in the least likely of places, that it's not always the kings and princesses that get to be with God, that God shows up to poor folks and people that are on the edge.
Yeah. What about you? What does this story tell you about God?
So there's a fun thing about Mary. There's the church has always loved Mary and written a lot about her and talked a lot about her. One of the names that the church gives Mary is Theotokos, which means bearer of God. And they treat her like a queen. Like the church treats her like a queen because of how important she is and how wonderful her faith is. I think part of what it tells us about God is that ordinary people can be bearers of God, that the way God chooses to come into the world is through people. And when we're teaching young people about the faith and what it means to be like a disciple of Jesus, one of the ways we describe it is part of what we pray for is that we can all become like Mary. We can all be bearers of God. It doesn't necessarily mean we have a baby that is Jesus, but it means that in our lives, we can help Jesus be known, that what God is doing can happen through our lives and through us. And part of what it means to be a Christian is to say yes to God in the same way that Mary did, that God, you can use my life to be a part of the world and to share your love and the good news about Jesus. So part of what I think we learn about God is that God shows up through people like Mary and like each of us, especially when we say yes to God and let our whole lives, including our bodies, be a part of how God shows up in the world. And I love that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So now it's time to try to stump one another, right?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
I'm really excited about this one.
All right, I'll let you go first. I'm pretty sure I'm going to stump you. I feel kind of bad because I don't want to make you feel dumb.
Hit me. How about you go first this time, bud?
Okay. So there's a special name for the song that Mary sings in the church, and it's in Latin.
No.
And I'm wondering, and if you've ever spent time in churches or in choirs, you've seen this word, and you've sung songs that are called this. And I'll give you a clue.
Okay.
In one translation, the song that Mary sings starts with, "My soul magnifies the Lord."
Oh, the Magnificat.
Oh, I should not have given you the clue. You got it. The Magnificat. That's right.
I was in choir.
Yeah.
I would have gotten there.
Oh, well.
No, maybe not.
The look on your face looked like you were not sure you were going to get there. Yeah. So if you ever hear a song called the Magnificat, that's the Latin word for what Mary sings, that my soul magnifies the Lord. I love that translation too, because it's like my soul is making God that much more visible for everybody around, magnifying what God is doing in the world. And it could be a fun thing to figure out, to include a couple Magnificats in your Christmas music, to find a couple that you might like to listen to. I'd recommend some, but the ones I like the most are the weird ones. So they're not exactly Christmas bangers. I don't think Bing Crosby sang a Magnificat, but yeah, fun fact about Mary's song, the Magnificat.
Sorry, give me a second. I'm Googling if Bing Crosby ever sang a Magnificat.
I think there's no chance. Although I'm pretty sure he was Catholic. So maybe he would have heard it, but I don't know that he ever recorded one.
I'd like to listen to a Mariah Carey Magnificat. A Mariah Magnificat.
That would be fantastic.
All right.
I'm ready. I went easy on you, just for the record. I went easy on you because I gave you a clue that really helped you. So,
okay. Are any of Mary's siblings mentioned in the Bible?
Are any of Mary's siblings mentioned in the Bible? I can't think of any, but I feel like this is the kind of question where there's probably a yes. But I can't think of any. So I'm going to say no.
Yes.
Oh! Who?
Do you know where?
Is it a trick question?
It's not a trick question.
Okay, who?
Her sister.
Her sister, whose name is?
She doesn't have a name. But at the crucifixion,
yes,
it says that the people standing there were his mother and his mother's sister.
Wow. Aunt something.
Jesus' aunt was mentioned.
I'll never forget you now. That's great. Well, I thought it was a trick question because there's this one part in the story where Jesus is preaching to a big crowd, and people are worried because he's preaching stuff that people don't want to hear, and it's making them angry. And somebody says, Jesus, your mother is outside, and she's worried about you. And Jesus says, who is my mother or my brother or my sisters? Only those who do the will of God are my mother and brother and sisters. So it's a little bit like some harsh words about his mother, but part of it is Mary is somebody who did the will of God. So I think she passes that particular test. But that was what I thought you were going at with the trick question. I totally did not remember that Mary's sister is at the crucifixion.
Yeah.
All right. Well, sorry, Auntie. I'll try to remember you on Good Friday.
Yes, there you go.
Dang it. I should not have given you a clue.
You should give me a clue. There's always next week.
There is.
We've got one more Advent adventure.
Oh,
one more opportunity to stump me.
I'm going to get you. I'm going to get you.
I'm ready. I'm going to go study up on Joseph now.
Do it.
All right. So this week, anytime you see a teenage girl, think of the story.
Okay. Or if you are a young woman, you might just say a prayer to God and think about Mary, and ask for what you want. And then maybe at the end of the prayer, you can say, but not my will, but your will. Because that's kind of what Mary ended up saying.
Yeah. Or if you see, if you have a nativity set at home and you see Mary, remember the story and remember how she was willing to follow God.
And I have one more idea.
Yeah.
If you're doing any drawing this week and you want to draw a picture of Mary, maybe you could draw a picture of Mary, how you imagine her, and then write the word Theotokos above it. It's THEOTOKOS. And all of your family will be very impressed that you know this fancy Greek word.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But we can remember that Mary is the bearer of God, and we can be too.
Yeah. All right. Well, we will see you next week for our next Advent, our final Advent adventure.
It's true.
And parents, don't forget, we are doing a special Advent driver's seat called Dark Advent. So make sure you join us over in the driver's seat where we are talking about Advent for grown-ups.
Yeah.
And don't forget, you can follow us on Instagram. We are at Minivangelism. And if you have any questions about Mary or you want to tell us about ways that you are getting ready for Christmas, you can send us an email to minivangelism@gmail.com.
And if you draw a picture of Mary, send it to us so that we can put it on Instagram.
Yes. And we want to see how well you spell Theotokos.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Minivangelism and the Driver's Seat are hosted by Anna Burrell and Drew Colby. Theme song written by David Burrell and produced by Evan Setzer. The theme song was performed by David Burrell, Drew Colby, and Evan Setzer. Podcast, sound design, and editing done by David Burrell. Minivangelism and the Driver's Seat are a ministry of Grace United Methodist Church in Manassas, Virginia. For more information, check out umcgrace.org.